وصحبه ومن والاه. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I First of all, as usual, I hope all of you are doing well, keeping yourself safe and also sane at the same time. Um, as promised, I will continue with delivering live lectures on Monday. And last week, if I'm not mistaken, we looked at interpretation and intellectual traditions, basically tafsir, yeah, in the Quran, in which we looked at the development or the history of tafsir, and we identified certain trends, in classical tafsir, and we also looked at the modern trends in tafsir. Basically, I provided a very general overview of classical and also modern trends in tafsir or in Quranic exegesis. Today, inshallah, my intention is to focus more on the textualist and also contextualist approaches in tafsir or in Quranic exegesis. Having said that, again, this is just to provide you with an overview of the topic. Perhaps we might discuss other things in further details in our synchronous or virtual meeting on Wednesday morning, inshallah. I will also provide you with the links, to the lectures. Basically, it is one lecture, but it has been divided into parts, by Professor Abdullah Said from the University of Melbourne, who is also the holder of the Sultan. I mean, he is also the Sultan Oman Professor in Islamic Studies at the University of Melbourne. Um, in which he basically discusses about the importance of appreciating context, when it comes to Quranic passages or Quranic verses, and I think we have also touched upon this when we looked at the socio-historical background of the Quran in the initial part of this course, whereby I argued, or perhaps we basically discussed, the importance of appreciating the social historical context in which the Quran was revealed, and appreciating such would inshallah contribute to a better understanding, a better comprehension of the Quran. Not only a better comprehension and understanding, but also when it comes to application of Quranic injunctions, that we can infer from the Quran, especially from the ethical legal text. We also looked at the categorization of these ethical legal texts in terms of application. Yeah. So this is where appreciating the socio-historical background or the context of revelation is actually important. So today, inshallah, I will just provide a very brief overview of the textualist and also contextualist approaches when it comes to Quranic exegesis. And I also hope that besides, depending on the slides which I will present, you could also watch the video of the lecture of Professor Abdullah Said, which I will share on Google Classroom, inshallah. So let me just share the slides with you now. Okay. So the subtopic which we shall discuss, as I mentioned just now, is the textualist and also contextualist approaches when it comes to Quranic exegesis. As I mentioned just now, we have gone through the history of Quranic exegesis, the development of tafsir, and also we looked at the trends, which existed in the we zoomed into the first 3 centuries of Islam, and also I gave a very brief overview of modern trends, in Quranic exegesis. So today we will focus on textualist and the contextualist approaches to tafsir. So much of today's Quranic scholarship is based on the textualist methodology, which also largely dominated tafsir in the pre-modern period. And this approach to tafsir actually relies on a referential theory of meaning to interpret the Quran, which mainly draws on linguistic rather than social or historical analysis. So here, the main, what would perhaps we can term as the main focus here is to basically infer lessons, rules, ahkam, etc. from the Quran on the basis of linguistic rather than social or historical analysis of the verses of the Quran. Yeah, this is with the belief that the language of the Quran has concrete and unchanging references. Yeah, and subsequently, this would imply that the meaning that a Quranic verse had upon its revelation still holds for the contemporary context. Yeah, so the text or the passage or the verse of the Quran here, as it is understood in the past, or the understanding in the past, is valid also in the present and also the future. So this basically is the argument. Yeah. Uh, this then brings us to this point that uh, this approach would then render the meaning of Quranic verses to be static, yeah, and that Muslims must adapt to this meaning, yeah. And this approach is in fact quite prominent in much of today's literature on the Quran, and it is generally well understood, yeah. So the textualist approach when it comes to Quranic exegesis is basically uh, that which is prominent and dominant and also well understood and well studied. The contextualist approach, on the other hand, yeah, is often associated with a form of Islamic reformism, or some might even term it as Islamic revivalism. Yeah, if we may use such a term. Yeah, um, because perhaps even that term can be used when it comes to the textualist approach. When they mean Islamic revival, perhaps they want to revive, yeah, the understanding or the meaning of the Quranic verses of passages as located in the past. Yeah, so perhaps that is why the word Islamic reformism is being used rather than revivalism in the sense. Yeah. So in comparison to the textualist approach, yeah, it is arguable that contextualists, yeah, those who adopt this approach have a more nuanced approach to finding meaning, yeah, in the Quranic text. And details of this approach would often vary between scholars. Yeah, so scholars who perhaps adopt this contextualist approach in interpreting Quranic verses, yeah, one might need to analyze, you know, their approach, their perspectives, um, because perhaps there is no one hard fast rule or principle in which all of them agree upon, yeah, when it comes to using the context or approaching the verses of the Quran from this perspective or from this angle. Having said that, the contextualists basically, when it comes to the meaning of a particular verse or even hadith, yeah, according to them, it is largely or to a large degree indeterminate, meaning it is not fixed, it is not static, yeah, and that over time, and it is dependent upon the social, historical, cultural, and linguistic context of the text. Yeah. So they argue that one must appreciate the context of revelation. Yeah, I also mentioned this in the beginning of the lecture. Yeah, appreciating the social, historical background of revelation, which would give us a better understanding and comprehension of the text. Not only that, but when it also comes to application, that would assist us in applying, yeah, the lessons or the guiding principles which are advocated in the Quran. So they consider any given word in the light of its context, yeah, and that to arrive at an understanding which is believed to be more relevant, yeah, to the circumstances of interpretation, yeah. So even when it comes to linguistics, language, yeah, it must be understood within the context in which the Quran was revealed, yeah, and this would assist us in arriving at an understanding which is believed to be more relevant, yeah, and taking into consideration the circumstances of revelation. So, according to the contextualist perspective, the Quran is not considered to be a book of laws, yeah, meaning that when there are certain injunctions in the Quran, it's not just a matter of, okay, the Quran mentions this, we are going to apply it, yeah. This might be perhaps the approach which is more dominant, meaning that we as Muslims, as we find certain injunctions in the Quran, then we have to apply it as it is mentioned in the Quran. So that might perhaps be the normative view, or the predominant view, or the approach in which one should understand and also apply Quranic injunctions. Yeah. However, according to the contextualist approach, values and principles that can be applied, to changing times and across different places. Yeah. So the Quran here is viewed, as a book, not just a book of law in which we have to apply certain injunctions which we find in the Quran as it is. Yeah. But the contextualist perspective argue that the Quran is in fact a book, which contains ideas, values, and principles that can be applied through changing times and across different places. And this requires both broad and narrow context of the Quran to be understood. Yeah. So, a broad contextual understanding allows a single verse to be compared to the overall intention and context of the Quranic text, while a narrow context must consider what appears directly before and after the verse in question, and also the exact words of the verse itself. So, here again, this issue of, I think we've mentioned this when we looked at coherence or nazam in the Quran, taking into consideration the preceding verse and the verse which comes after, yani part of al-munasabah or coherence or nazam in the Quran. So this also plays an important role when it comes to interpreting verses of the Quran, meaning that we do not treat the verses in isolation, but we approach the verses, uh, as it belongs, to a larger context. Yani we do not just treat the Quranic verse as a unit in isolation, but we also take into consideration uh, uh, other verses, and the intention perhaps of the surah, of the whole chapter, and also the Quran as a whole. Hermeneutics also plays an important role, whereby it is basically a set of principles used in interpretation of text, and can also be defined as philosophical exploration of the character and necessary conditions for all understanding. As such, this approach does not attempt to assign a fixed and stable meaning to a text. Because why? Because it presupposes that the meaning of a text is found in or assigned to it by the people who read the text. So whether we like it or not, this argument basically proposes that when it comes to the interpretation of the text, um, we will be influenced by the reader of the text, because it is he who perhaps provides this interpretation on the basis of his or her understanding or view of the text. And there are also other external factors which might influence, the way in which he or she views the text. So the role of the reader here in the creation of meaning is emphasized. And again, this is aligned with the reformist and perhaps liberal scholarship in contemporary Islamic thought. And it confronts the assertions of Muslim textualists who do not assign, any significant role to the reader in the identification of meaning. So Fazlur Rahman, he argues that in order to understand the Quran, Muslims must move away from reductionist and formulaic approaches which do not recognize the Quran's socio-historical and also linguistic context. And as such, we need to emphasize on the context of revelation, because without being aware of the social and political conditions of the society in which the Quran was revealed, one could not actually comprehend or understand the true message of the Quran. And he further argues, let me quote him, that the implementation of the Quran cannot be carried out literally in the context of today, because this may result in thwarting the very purposes of the Quran, and that although the findings of the fuqaha, of the Muslim jurists, or the ulama, or the scholars of Islam during the past 13 centuries or now 14 centuries also should be seriously studied and given due weight, it may well be found that in many cases their findings were either mistaken or sufficed for the needs of that society but not for today. So although perhaps some might view this as a call to disregard the Islamic heritage, and then we should formulate our own interpretation. Um, I think this is not the case. Why? Because Fadl Rahman also says that we should seriously study what our scholars have actually written, yeah, what the ulama and the fuqaha have actually written, and we must give due attention and give due weight to it, yeah. um, and perhaps in doing so, perhaps in analyzing, yeah, their findings, yeah, when they explore the Quranic passages, we might find perhaps certain rulings inferred from that passages of the Quran or verses of the Quran, when it comes to implementing it in today's age, and in, I mean, considering current circumstances, yeah, perhaps their findings might be suitable, yeah. He does not deny, yeah, that it might have been sufficient, yeah, for that period of time in which they lived in, but perhaps in our current times, it requires more reflection, uh, and more reassessment, yeah, revisiting certain positions, etc. And again, I depended on Abdul Saeed's book, yeah, in which he mentioned, or in which he basically made a presentation contrasting between the textualist and contextualist approaches when it comes to the interpretation of the Quran. And that is why, as part of this live lecture, I hope you would also watch, yeah, the series of videos, in which I will give you the link in our Google Classroom, for you to benefit from, inshallah. Okay, and then we will discuss this further in our virtual meeting, inshallah, on Wednesday morning. So I will suffice, I mean, by mentioning these points which I have mentioned, yeah, which I know is very general in nature. It only took less than, I mean, about 15 minutes or so, yeah. But the whole idea here is basically to provide us, or to provide you, um, with a general overview of these approaches, yeah, the textualist and also contextualist approach when it comes to interpreting the Quran. And inshallah, this will become clearer in Abdullah Saeed's lecture, which I hope that all of you will watch. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم. Again, stay safe, stay sane, take care of yourselves. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.